We're back again with another episode of 40K Fanatics Podcast. I'm Shane, and that's Austin.
Hey.
The sun has finally returned.
Yeah, it's been a dreary week, I tell you.
I tell you what, everything was flooded.
Nearly apocalyptic, one could say.
Some 90-mile-an-hour wind hit my house. It appears to have damaged nothing. Thank the baby Jesus.
Yeah, we've had a major, very odd, severe weather outbreak for a week. Like every other day is a tornado warning.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous. So the bits box is going to be somewhat truncated today. But that's okay, because you're going to get a week where we do multiple podcasts. So you're going to get a bonus pod where we do a movie. We've watched another one.
Movie?
You saw the Minecraft movie.
Oh, did I ever? That is an amazing film. I don't care what anyone says. I feel like I am living in an alternate universe where I saw a different movie than everyone else, because I enjoyed this movie very much.
I haven't seen it yet. I feel like that you went in with a lot more buy-in than most, like from the jump.
Possibly.
I feel like that a lot of people, a lot of the reviewers that I've watched, because I don't really have much interest in seeing the Minecraft movie, if I'm being honest, there were a lot that were pleasantly surprised, which is a good place to be, you know?
Yeah.
But back to our show, which is about 40K and miniature hobbying and whatnot. We're going to open up the Vox channel and read your comments. This one comes from frequent contributor Paradukes on last week's pod of the top 3 biggest lore mistakes that we feel Games Workshop has made. Now, we've had some behind-the-scenes upheaval where I've started making the thumbnails and I appear to have broke the YouTube. So, we don't have a whole lot yet on that particular thing, but tell your friends, like and subscribe, comment, so that we get millions and millions of views and can make the money. But I think that the issue will be rectified probably with this pod, and we'll be back to normal. But this comes from YouTube, and Paradukes and Dave and Company, who commented over on Spotify, which if you just like to listen and don't like to watch, because we understand there's not that much to watch, because that would be complicated. My God, you're a garden gnome now.
Oh, am I ever?
Yeah, go check that out on YouTube. You can see what Austin actually looks like, which is kind of fun. But he said similar stuff to Paradukes here, and I'm going to read this. It's kind of long, but it's really good. Again, this is our opinions of things in the 40K lore that we find problematic, nonsensical, silly, etc. And first thing he does is straighten us out on our ever-present confusion of Vulcan, the Primarch, the planet Nocturne, Spock, the starship crew member, and his planet Vulcan. All right, and he says, yes, Spock is from Vulcan, while Vulcan is from Nocturne. He continues, I can't really disagree with most of these. I do like the plot moving forward, as I remember decades ago wanting to know what would happen next. Personally, I've been liking the slow creep forward over stagnation, and I think it's good for the overall health of the setting, but I can definitely understand wanting it to stay static. With regards to female Primarchs, I'm not keen on the Forgotten and the Purged being the only women involved, as it doesn't look great for them to be the only ones who were excised from history. I'd much rather that Call build himself a daughter alongside Alpha Primus and turn out to have been working on converting Astartes' gene seed to work just as well with women. That being said, if they have to retcon it, so be it. Female Space Marines were retconned out of existence in the first place, so it's not like it's without precedent. He then adds, in an edit, also, don't even question the dates. Gilliman has set an entire department to just try and figure out what year it is, and frankly, no one knows. That's GW's excuse, and they're sticking with it.
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned in our podcast about the Department of Time Management, I guess I'll call it, trying to figure out what year it is.
I think that's really interesting, because I was unaware of that. I just assumed that we were, at year 43,267. And, we were just bumping along. But it could be that it's year 75,000, and the long war is indeed lengthy.
When in the bureaucratic administration forgot to put the batteries in the clock, so it's just stayed the same for however many years we've been at it.
Yeah, well, and like, who's going to notice, right?
Yeah,
The
sir, I
servant,
think that clock's wrong. Are you going against the Imperium?
the holy clock on the wall
The
in
clock is
the
always
office.
right.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, well, it
It's
hasn't.
blinking 12.
Yeah, it hasn't moved in people's whole lifetimes. Everybody's forgot how they're supposed to work. That's funny.
Like your parents' VCR.
That's right. Yeah. Could you imagine basing the entire calendar on the old VCR? But that's a Vox channel where you can have your comments read. So we encourage you to make them, whether you agree with us or not. In that case, I was pleasantly surprised that Paradukes kind of was picking up what we were putting down, and so was Dave and Company.
Yeah.
He nears makes no difference. Echoed Paradukes comments just over on Spotify, where you can leave comments, which I think is neat. Also, I want to say this. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about making a website for their music and stuff. And they were like, should I get smart links to have like the Apple Music and the Google Play and the da 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 da? Now, I posed to him what I will now pose to you all, which is listen on Spotify only. If you're an Apple Music person, go get rid of it. Get Spotify. Listen that way. If you like to listen on anything else, get rid of those things. Go get Spotify. Why am I encouraging this, Austin? It's
Why?
because if we put all our eggs in one basket, then maybe that'll juice the algorithm to show it to more people, you see. Yeah, we're not into diversity. We don't
Wise
need that
thinking.
diversification. We need it. We need to win in category one. But of course, I jest. We just hope you listen and tell your friends and everything about your favorite 40K and miniature gaming podcast. But it is now time to open up the bits box. Open it up. What did you do in the miniature hobby this week, Austin?
Well, I had been starting on those goblins, and then right after I got that dry brushing done on them, as we saw last week in the podcast episode, we then entered our apocalyptic severe weather situation in this region.
You have a little bit of
Uh,
anxiety of these things, I understand.
I like to look at the data and try to figure out how I'm going to be impacted by this potentially up to the day of and hour by hour.
Yeah, so
Because I don't like tornadoes.
yeah, I'm the opposite of you. I only care if it's going to hit the house. Like, let me know when it's going to hit the house. If it's impact imminent, I want to know. Until that moment, I really don't care. Like, I mean, I watch and I keep it on, but only so I can see if it's going to hit the house. Because my thing is, if I could somehow pick up and move the house a county over 2 or 3 days ahead of time, that'd be great. Except they can't tell us if it would hit the house 2 or 3 days ahead of time. They could hardly tell if it's going to hit the house 30 seconds ahead of time. And so I'm like, I just have to let that go.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not forecasting for the region. I'm like forecasting for my like general area in the county and seeing like what the pattern's looking like in this small area.
Yeah, no, I'm
So
with
I'm
you on
not
that.
I'm not as selfless as you're like making me out to be
Oh, no,
for
no,
this.
no. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, man,
Uh,
like, you want to talk about some stuff you can't do anything about. It's like, it's either going to hit you or it's not.
but in addition to that, all these are basically nocturnal threats, so they're happening overnight into the night, and I have to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning. I've been staying up most days this past week, way past my bedtime, and then getting maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep, maybe less some days, and having to do that cycle over and over and over for the week until this entire storm has passed. So I have been absolutely exhausted and not able to do much of anything besides going to work, looking at storms, and then going to sleep.
And then waking up to storms.
Yeah. So
But
it has not been a fun time.
no, no. But the sun's shining again, so we're through that. And
Yeah.
you ordered a new fish. We've not had a hobby update of your aquarium in quite some time. I
I
see.
ordered a barnacle blenny for my tank. It's a little blenny fish. They're kind of like a longish, maybe an inch to 2 inch fish. They kind of like cram themselves up into little holes in the rock or dead barnacle shells and stuff like that, and they'll occasionally poke their head out, and they see bits of food coming by, like shrimp or something. They'll like literally lightning quick spring out of their hole, snatch the food up, and then return back to their hole.
Oh, that sounds like
It's
fun.
wild. Yeah, but talking about things I also got in the hobby, I recently got a shipment in from. You have to look them up before I shout them out. I don't want to get them wrong. But I got some movement trays in, some of those 3D printed movement trays that I've been enjoying. Ordered those online and got those in for Old World.
Nice.
Uh,
Do they sit flat?
replacing my Yes, they sit flat, so they are better than the Goblin trays I was using that were made of uh, basically balsa wood.
Yeah.
Uh, got those, and then I had ordered. It's Elric's Hobbies. That's who this is from. Elric's Hobbies.
Elric or
And
Eldritch?
Elric, sorry, ELRIK Elric's Hobbies.
Okay. I will have to look
And
him
I
up
had
because
also
I need some movement trays myself.
yeah, good movement trays from this guy. We are endorsing him. He is going to be our movement tray guy. They're amazing, and I like this guy so much. I ordered 10 of his dice that have his logo on it. But unfortunately, he was out of those, so he had to uh, hook me up with some dice to cover that. And instead, I got some Ultramarine dice for my potential Ultramarines force somewhere in the far distant future.
You know, we give a lot of stick to Ultramarines just because they're so, um, they've got that giant doorstop of a codex with all their however many data cards and way too many units and all that. But damn it, they look like they'd be fun, don't they? Like I could just see
I will.
myself having a whole collection, and I'd have at least one of every damn unit that they have at some stage because you'd always have something fresh to paint, to buy, to do, and
Yeah,
that that's cool. As for
yeah.
myself,
People.
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say people want to hate on them for being the poster boys, but sometimes the poster boys are kind of fun.
Yeah, everybody hates on Superman until he comes and does Superman stuff, and it's like, all right, big
Yep.
blue boy scout, you're pretty good. Um, that's a movie that we might have to do as we do a movie.
They
Anyhow,
had a sneak peek of it for Minecraft. Go ahead.
uh, I did a bunch of priming. I've been playing with that metal eagle. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I had to bust out some big old full size drill bits to get that thing onto its base on its flight stand.
Hmm.
Uh, I finished and posted to our Discord, which is free, by the way. Go join the Discord. Link below on the YouTube video or in the Spotify. Get in our Discord and post your own bits box to show us what you've been working on. We like to see what you're doing and to comment and ask you questions. But I did this fatty battering ram guy, and I think he looks really cool. It was a fun experiment in skin tones.
Hmm.
I made him look like he's got really poor circulation, but then he's a fatty battering ram, so there's two guys behind him that are pushing him, uh, presumably into some other combatants, and they're like fit and tan, and so
Hmm.
I liked the idea of doing those multiple different skin tones on the same model. So I've got three different people that look like three different people, which is nice. I did so much glazing, much more glazing than I've ever done. Um, So that was neat. I did quite a bit of paint mixing, which is something that I have only dabbled in. But I tell you what was neat was they've all got jackets and pants and knee pads and stuff, right? And
Yeah.
especially their clothes. I I did, a lot of like I didn't well, I started to say I didn't use any washes. I take that back. I did use one wash on one guy's shirt because it was the right thing to do. I wanted it to be like a cowhide kind of vest thing that he's wearing. So I
Yeah.
stuck the army painter strong tone on it over some brown, and ta-da, right? But
Hmm.
everybody else's jacket is various types of leather or pleather, and I didn't even think about it as I was running around highlighting that stuff, which is evidence of a pretty substantial leap.
Yeah.
Like the skin tones I was given a lot of attention to, and I was really stretching, and that was great. But then there was also this part where I went to do their clothes and all that, and it was just like, no questions. You know what I mean? When you're
Hmm.
doing something and it's
Yeah.
like, I've never done this before, yet I know this recipe. So that was kind of a neat
Hmm.
discovery. And then this week is back to my dozen elf archers, which will make I mean, I'm nearing 1,000 points quickly, and I've got a couple of new characters on the way that will be less overpowered than the Elven Prince on Dragon, because and
Hmm.
nobody's trying to play against me with that, but I want to have it as a centerpiece of my army. Uh, the long and the short of it is that we're going to be playing Old World before you know it, Austin.
Are we?
We are. How excited are you?
Pretty excited. I've been looking to get a game of it for a long time now.
It's coming soon. I'm gonna have some dudes. I need to get another chariot built. It's gonna be great. I'm really looking forward to it. It's such a silly game. You know,
You know,
you can play Old World and it can be a very fine tactical experience, or sometimes somebody will get scared that shouldn't have, and they'll run in the direction of somebody else and scare them, and then your entire army will run away and you lose.
yeah. I want to make this proposal for playing this game. I'd like to take it to the game store. That way others can see how amazing this looks.
Yeah, I would love to do that because I venture to guess that no one in our area has played a fully painted Old World game of any scale at all.
Probably not.
And we're gonna be looking pretty slick out there.
Hmm.
We should play it on a day where there's going to be a lot of people around too. That way everybody can see what it's about. Yeah,
Yeah.
bootstrapping our own games. Am I right?
Oh yeah.
Let's close the bits box because that's pretty much it.
Closing it. Boom.
All right,
Slam that.
in our main topic today, this is going to kind of tie into what we talked about last week. Now, I expect, unless my unless the week before last thumbnail really broke the YouTube a little bit for us, I expect there to be a pile of people that get in the comments on our last, mistakes in the 40K lore pod, just mad,
Hmm.
saying that I'm stupid, saying that we don't know what we're talking about, agreeing with us on Primaris, um, being vaguely misogynist and or racist. I've done this before. I kind of intentionally picked that topic to try to gin up some outrage because every now and then it's fun to just get new people in, good, bad, or otherwise, right? But
Yeah.
today, I want to tie onto that a little bit with what actually is a bit more of a productive discussion, which is, does 40K need a reboot?
Maybe.
Maybe.
But I would say it already has been.
Okay, now that's an interesting take. I've got four little points here, and we're going to run through them. The fourth one, by the way, is asking the question that you are proposing, the answer to, that it possibly has already been rebooted. But my first thing is, why reboot? And I wonder if you've got a good bit of insight onto this. But how many times has Batman been rebooted? How many times has the Ninja Turtles, the Transformers, all the superheroes, DC and Marvel, been rebooted? Why do we do that, Austin?
Uh, Trying to get a new creative spin going, trying to things just get a little worn out. Like if you've got Batman going on for 300 issues and it's just the same going after Penguin and the Joker, Same thing over and over and over. Eventually, you get worn out on that, and you need to, I guess, blow up everything and have some kind of universal cataclysmic thing, as DC does every say 10 years or so, and resets everything.
Yeah, and it's not even that there's like a cataclysmic thing. It's just the story comes to an end. Like Batman gets too old to do it, and then you can move to Batman Beyond, which is a reboot in its own sort of way. You know, sort of a fence riding kind of thing. Um, take Spider-Man for instance. He just gets rebooted like wholesale, and nobody seems that upset because fundamentally he's still Spider-Man. Um, I believe the reason why not to reboot is obviously you end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? There's a lot of good. There's a lot of of goodwill, of greatness that is built up over the
Yeah.
years, over the decades of the existence of something, of the stories being told. However, there's also all the baggage that comes with it. Like,
Hmm.
and 40K is full of it. In fact, due to the satirical nature of the galaxy burning where there is only war, the entire point of the thing is to carry and collect baggage. But there comes a point where our various characters, our Batman for instance, his legs can only be broken so many times before it starts to become silly that he's still out here doing this. And
Hmm.
so, you know, look at Dante of the Blood Angels. Like his whole thing is he's just ancient, but he kind of won't be allowed to die, and they just keep rolling him
Hmm.
out there, and that's cool. But how long does that make any kind of sense? So my next point on this is what happens when we don't reboot, and I think that what we are at, what we talked about last week, is a good example of that. Which is there's some stuff that is problematic that you are stuck with, and then there's new ideas that would be cool, but you can't do them because you painted yourself into a corner previously. This is the whole thing where uh, I've previously talked about how what value does the lore have to us, the consumers?
Hmm.
There's a not insignificant part of the internet that feels like the lore is valuable, like their knowledge of it, their fluency in it has got some kind of value, and then they're like, well, there can't be female space marines because the gene seed only works on men. And I'm like, well, but why? Why does it have to do that? So I pose to you, what would happen if 40K got a reboot?
Lots of wailing and gnashing of teeth, lots of burnt armies, scorched battlefields at tabletop stores.
I'm not saying you change any of the model range initially. Obviously, there'd be a huge release of new stuff, right? But uh, yeah, you would add female space marines. You would take away the whole Primaris nonsense. There could just be short and tall space marines. You know what I mean? So looking at you, Grey Knights. Now you're just small because you happen to be, right? Um, you could have female Primarchs. Uh, you could have the Emperor not be dead yet, or does he need to be? I
Well,
I don't know. What if
like
what if
if
there
you're
was a
changing
queen?
these if you're changing these things in the lore, it doesn't matter if you're just changing them in the lore. This For a lot of people, the lore and the game and the models, they're all one thing. So if you start tweaking with one part of it, they're going to get very upset, which is what I was getting at. You can't you can't change anything because you'll have just a massive, massive outrage from a lot of people, and it'll be very, very embarrassing for those people.
Well, my next point here is things that do and don't reboot. So, Star Wars doesn't reboot, but Batman does. I don't see anybody, which obviously the casting of Batman is always a cluster bleep. The various reboots of the Batman cartoons, nobody ever seems to get mad at. And at every iteration, they've been mostly beloved. Obviously, you've got Batman the Animated Series, the Kevin Conroy, which is the gold standard for any animated product that has ever been, in my opinion, and it is shared with many. But then you go to the next one, where the Joker is almost like this ape creature, which was I think just called the Batman, and it was fine.
Yes.
Everybody was fine with it. Batman Beyond was strange for a second to people, but then they were like, Bruce is here. You know, it was 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and everybody was happy. And then you moved on. You know, it gets as campy as Batman the Brave and the Bold, which was very Adam
That
West.
was my Batman. I love Brave and the Bold.
See, that's what I'm saying. Everybody loves it, and it just keeps rebooting, and nobody seems to mind. And yet, you bring up the idea of rebooting something like 40K, and everybody's head explodes. So I'm like, well, why is that?
I'll give you the reason why it's like that.
Go ahead.
Okay, because comics have a long history of rebooting their crap. That's what I was getting at earlier. DC, like every so many years, they just press the blow up the universe button and just blow everything up and rejig their universe into a new one. So a lot things coming from a comic property, it's a lot more forgiving if you're like constantly rebooting stuff because people are used to that. They're used to elseworld stories, all parallel universes, different stuff in the comics. So like, oh, there's new Batman show. That's just this version of Batman in the multiverse. That's kind of how things are viewed. With 40K, you come at it from this is Warhammer 40K. You don't have any of these alternate notions in the lore and in the property. It's all just one thing. This is the 40K world. There's not like this is 40K Prime. This is 40K Beta. You don't have anything like that. You have this is the 40K world, its own little ecosystem of lore. And once you start really messing with that, that's why people get upset because you are kind of going in and messing up the world that has been created.
Star Trek.
Star Trek is a similar.
Star Trek gets rebooted, and it also doesn't. So, because let's cover kind of the big three because we've got comic books. Obviously, you're right. They're often rebooted. People are used to it. It's expected as part of what you get with comics. Star Wars, I believe, is on the other side of the spectrum with 40K. Because I'm also thinking about things like how many Julius Caesar type things have there been that just they come and it's this version of it and then it it does this thing and then they do it again a little while later and they do it again. We just had the Gladiator 2, which is hardly a sequel. I mean, but it's like we're going to do another Gladiator movie. And so I don't know if it's even a reboot is the way that it is, but it's definitely something that allows for a freshening up. Star Wars has not had a reboot, and I'm nearly prepared to say that it probably should. Because we have run into a situation in Star Wars where the stuff that they've put together, looking at you, sequel trilogy, where Coruscant was destroyed in The Force Awakens, like it's over with. How many planets that we knew and loved were just blown to smithereens? It's kind of in a spot where it cannot continue forward. So, and yet, if it does continue forward, it has to do so in the guise of a reboot with all new characters and new places and new stuff, but then with the drug along baggage of every single thing that has come before it, of how stuff works, for instance. There seems to be a desire in a lot of these new Disney Plus shows for Star Wars to be some amount more camp, more Batman Brave and the Bold than Batman the Animated Series. And yet it's not allowed to, because you can't have camp if you had serious as a heart attack, and those two things are tethered together. You see?
I feel like first I want to say Coruscant wasn't destroyed, as far as I know. That was a different planet.
Are you sure?
I believe
I would
I've read this
I
before.
would have to check.
It was like the New Republic's other planet that just so happened to look like Coruscant that got destroyed. The whole thing's just a mess. But
Okay, well, all right.
I think Star Wars, what it should have done was you should have had 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then Lucas should have been able to make
At
7, 8,
least
9.
or at least 7. Like just
No, literally give him 7, 8, 9. He had the plan
sure,
out.
sure.
He had the storyline and everything. Have all 9 films. Then that's it. That's it. No more Star Wars.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're not going to do that because money. But like,
Because we live in a capitalist hellhole.
well, I mean, look, I like to buy stuff, man. Like this whole 40K thing continues on, lore and otherwise, because I like to buy stuff. So we got to set that idea out on the side for this discussion, because I agree with you. If Star Wars stopped after Luke burned Anakin on the pyre, then yeah, that's where it should stop. Like, and then the galaxy exists in peace, ruled by a new line of Jedi created by Luke and whoever he tracks down, and Han and Leia, etc. Yeah, and they lived happily ever after. Except, did you see how many toys we sold of Return of the Jedi Luke? You know, so it was always going to continue. Anyway, I digress. So, but now we sort of established what I think are both ends of the spectrum, right? You've got comic books, which in this case we've talked about Batman because I think he's a good one. You know, he seems to be the one that is rebooted most successfully, most often. And then we've got Star Wars, which is presently, in my opinion, and I think most, uh, uh, it is crumbling under the weight of its carried baggage. And then in the middle, and I think this is good, a little tease for the movie that we're going to do today, is Star Trek, which at once is not rebooted, but then sometimes is. So you've got the Kelvin movies with Chris Pine?
Yes.
Yes, one of those Chris's. Which
No,
are
it's Chris Pine.
which are stone cold reboots of the original series. And then you've got
Oh,
the Next
they're
Generation.
not really.
Well, I wish. Okay, I mean, I guess they're not, but they are. It is the most tenuous connection to have this multiverse idea. I mean, we that I feel like is a conversation worth having on another day. Does 40K need a multiverse? Which, let me tell you, I say no. However, it gives you opportunity to have a new Kirk that's not so horny, and it gave you an opportunity to tell some stories that were a lot less hokey. The whole thing could look more modern and less camp, you see. And I think those are good reasons to have a reboot. At the same time, Star Trek The Next Generation is a reboot. And though I know it is just sped forward in time, like, they could just say, nah, that old stuff never happened. And I don't think the show suffers in any way because of that. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I mean, it works. I mean, each show, like, they do. Because if you look at Star Trek, you have TOS and you have TNG. It's almost its own reboot doing TNG. Because
Yeah.
you've got the new setting and new time and everything, but it still has that same kind of grasp going on with the shared overall story.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
feel like if 40K, if 40K wanted to go down that direction with a reboot, they would do like Warhammer 50K and just jump us 10,000 years and have all the ramifications of that, so you can shuffle the cards around and then have a whole new game. Fix up any lore things you wanted to change up, introduce new things, introduce new toys for people to buy, uh, and that's one way they could do that. And then you can say, oh well, we still have 40K over here, but we've just jumped the timeline forward. You can just do that, which I think people would be upset by, but I think that would be maybe it'd be easier to swallow that horse pill than having to like do it the hard way and just do a hard reboot of 40K and say, well, here's new 40K.
Well, that's an interesting take too, because I mean we joked about that in our last pod about like at what point does Warhammer 70K come out or 60K, which sounds ridiculous, and then we get into the idea that nobody actually knows what year it is, um, but that kind of doesn't matter. I see what you're saying. Nobody seemed to mind when they were like, okay, we've got 40K, hey, we're gonna do 30K because we've got this whole Horus Heresy, which was always referenced in the 40K lore, and now we're going to tell that story. And it's like everybody's fine with that. Everybody's fine with this prequel, the younger versions of the Primarchs, and the walking around Emperor and all that. Uh, I wonder. I guess the way you could do it and keep some of the good stuff, because like I would hate for there to be, I would hate to be for there to be a time where there's no Gilliman and no Abaddon. Does that make me crazy?
I mean, they've stuck around for forever.
Yeah, so at some point, the way it would have to work is there would have to be a new thing that made the Primarchs less special. Like a new Primarch type thing, a new something, right? So the Primarchs, because if we're not going to retcon, if we're not going to do a full reboot, and we're not going to wholesale retcon stuff, then and we want to update this thing for modern sensibilities, then there needs to be something else. But then your rank and file Space Marine becomes so weak. I don't know. I think I would prefer if 40K just had a stone cold reboot. If they just did Batman again, and all of a sudden the penguin is some cobblepot woman.
A woman, yeah.
Yeah, like I think that would be fine. I think it'd be easy to do too because we're missing so many plastic Primarch kits that you could just say, Jagatai Khan is an anime girl. And let me tell you something. I think for every one person crying about Jagatai Khan being retconned, there would be 15 more that are like, oh yes, give me that. Because I see what y'all are into.
Yeah, I don't know about that. 40K has been rebooted in the past.
Yeah, so this is your opinion, and this will kind of wrap us up. So you think it has been rebooted? Like
Yes,
as
if
for
you look,
as 40K or like as not Rogue Trader. What the heck's that book called that you've got?
it's called Rogue Trader.
That's right. That's right.
I would argue that 40K has been rebooted, but not like hard reboot in that you like completely. Well, okay, so if you look at Rogue Trader, you have Rogue Trader. I'm gonna list out my sort of like these are the 40K
Iterations.
reboots as they are. Yeah, the iterations of 40K. First, you have Rogue Trader. You've got kind of this weird science fiction world
Science
that kind of
fiction
lays the ground
fantasy game type thing.
science fantasy game that kind of lays the groundwork of everything that populates 40K. And then you have Warhammer 40K Second Edition that kind of like smooths everything over and gives us more of our final crystallized form of 40k that we know. It,
It's
it cuts out a lot of the Rogue Trader fat that it had,
yeah,
and oddities and weird stuff.
it's like the Rogue Trader was, we're gonna play general fantasy Dungeons and Dragons, and then the second edition Warhammer 40k was uh, Tolkien has written the Lord of the Rings, which I know the order of those two things are not the same, but I feel like that's almost the way that they feel from one another. It's like we just have
It's just
we got a lot of sci-fi and fantasy stuff because it's laying around, and then the next time it's like, no, these things have names, these are the factions, and this is the world, and it's like the whole thing is fleshed out and you can see it.
yeah, it's kind of like that. It's just kind of crystallizes it.
Yeah.
Then you have that for most of the '90s. Have the second edition world. Things are kind of bright and colorful in the depictions and everything. And you have the lore, and then turn of the century, you then get around third of the century. I have to look at the actual release date for a second, but then you have the next iteration of 40k, which comes with third edition, and this is where it starts leaning heavily into the grim dark. This is where you start getting the real dark paintings. You get the Black Templars on the cover of the starter edition. Everything you get a Dark Eldar. It gets really dark at this point.
Yeah.
And this edition or iteration goes on up until 8th edition. This is kind of like your core 40k. This is what a lot of people think about 40k. This is what it is this time period. And then after this, you then get the 8th edition Reboot, which is our most recent reboot, where they start moving the timeline forward. They introduce Primaris Marines, and
And the
the
return.
art style the art style starts to brighten up a little bit more
Yeah, and it's the return of
than it
the
was.
Primarchs to the tabletop and to the narrative, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
where
So,
that's where
so
we
I feel
start
like
to find them, or they wake up, or they appear in various ways.
this is definitely, I feel like a reboot, but not like a definite, like you can definitely tell it's a reboot, but they've definitely gone through and said this is how we're going to shake things up to reboot the game.
So,
So I feel like these are the iterations of 40k that
so do
can
you
be seen.
think that what Paradukes and what Dave and company are talking about with Belisarius' call and his um, I'm not very familiar with him. We'd have to get Casey on unless you know. Like he is the sort of chemist or alchemist of the whole Gene Seed Astartes program. Is that his purpose in a nutshell?
He's he's a MacGuffin that was kind of created for the whole Primaris thing. He's like a tech priest guy who created the Primaris Marines in secret with the Emperor,
Okay, so
and
we could have
then he.
him. Go ahead.
I feel like he's the key to everything. If anything you want to do forward with 40k, in far as introducing things like female Marines, he would definitely be the MacGuffin to bring in. Say, oh, we'll call had been figuring out. It's like he's been retroactively introduced into Horse Heresy
Oh, I see. So so
to tie
he
him in.
so he could do this. Say, let's call it a soft reboot because I think that's what people do call these. So the next soft reboot could be a development by Call to come up with a way for the Astartes program to be accepted by, say, all colors and creed and sexes. Am I right? And then we could, and then it's like, okay, and from now on there can be, you know, black, white, Indian, however, Chinese space marines of whatever gender you want, and we can have some, we can get away from the rush of skinheads that we have presently, and
And
possibly
just they
tell some.
called it.
Yeah, and you're right, because he made some breakthrough, and then that kind of becomes that becomes to steal a bit of their silly nomenclature, a Rubicon that is crossed that then can go forward, I suppose.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let us know what you think. Does 40k need a reboot? I kind of feel like it could stand one just because I get weary. Like, I love Star Wars so much, but it's becoming difficult to defend it at this point because at every turn, one must consider the whole of the work, and it now carries around so much baggage as to feel unmanageable at times. And 40K's got a bit of that too. So, but perhaps a soft reboot is the idea. But let us know in the comments what you think. Soft reboot, hard reboot, Warhammer 80K, which sounds terrible. Because you know what they would do. They would just turn it into Blade Runner and it would be a debacle. Like
Yeah, we need Warhammer 401k.
That's right. Yeah, we need Warhammer 42,627. As always, don't forget, folks, to
Be fanatical.
we'll see you next time.